Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was more than just a musician. He was a force of nature, a man who set high standards for himself and those around him. When he wasn't on tour giving the best show possible, Elvis craved normalcy. He longed for the simple joys of being with people he truly cared about. For Elvis, being a leader meant being an example for his band, crew, and everyone else in his orbit. He demanded perfection not just in his performances but in how everyone conducted themselves. This intense pressure took a toll on him, but Elvis needed that pressure, that responsibility to feel alive. In July 1972, Elvis briefly returned to Memphis, seeking a slice of home life amidst his hectic touring schedule. It was there that he met Linda Thompson, a stunning young woman who would soon become a significant part of his life for the next 4 years. Memphis, with its familiar comforts, allowed Elvis to reconnect with friends and indulge in simple pleasures, like visiting the Memphian Theater. Here, fate introduced him to Linda, who was not just beautiful but also held the title of Miss Tennessee Universe at the time. The tales surrounding Elvis as a lover are legendary, often focusing on his time making movies and his overtly sexual relationships. However, those close to him during different periods of his life paint a different picture. Elvis was attentive to his dates, always ensuring they were the center of attention. He believed in making a statement with his girlfriend by dressing her in the finest jewelry and clothing, making it clear she was his. Elvis wasn't just about the public image, he wanted genuine connection and admiration from those close to him. Elvis's next major move in the spotlight came in 1973 when he embarked on a groundbreaking global television event. Using satellite technology, he would perform live for audiences across 40 countries. The plan was ambitious. Elvis would start in Honolulu, Hawaii, performing at midnight, with the show then broadcast live to Asia, Europe, and beyond. This was a monumental step forward, allowing millions who previously could only dream of seeing Elvis live to experience his magic from the comfort of their homes. Before this global broadcast, Elvis did a dress rehearsal, performing to a live audience. It was a spectacular show, meticulously choreographed and filled with 23 songs, all chosen personally by Elvis. Dressed in a striking white cape adorned with American symbols, Elvis captivated an estimated 1 billion viewers, making it the largest audience for any television event up to that point. But the strain of this monumental achievement was evident. After the exhausting day of performing and recording, Elvis seemed drained. He had been pushing himself hard, performing double shows in Vegas and on the road. His voice, once powerful, began to falter, and his usual cheerfulness gave way to frustration and exhaustion. In May, things took a drastic turn when the Sahara Tahoe Theater overbooked and fans were left outside in the cold. Elvis's frustration boiled over, his usual composure shattered by the constant pressure and security issues. His voice grew weaker and he eventually canceled shows, retreating to Los Angeles to rest. It was clear that the king was struggling, overwhelmed by the demands of his life and career. In June, a frantic call from Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, changed everything. Elvis had not shown up in St. Louis as expected, leaving his team worried sick. When Joe, one of Elvis's closest associates, found him in his hotel room, Elvis was barely conscious in bed. This was not the Elvis anyone knew, a shocking decline that marked a turning point in the life of the king. In the midst of Elvis's tumultuous health journey, a particularly alarming episode unfolded in July 1973 in Atlanta, Georgia. It began with Elvis appearing visibly distressed, his once handsome face now bloated and puffy. His hands were swollen, and it was evident something severe was happening to him. This wasn't just another case of exhaustion or the usual rigors of touring, this was a medical emergency. Elvis's entourage, worried but not fully understanding the gravity, tried to manage the situation themselves. But it quickly became clear that professional help was needed. A call went out for medical assistance, and I, being the closest medical professional available, rushed to his side. Recognizing Elvis instantly, yet seeing a man in dire straits, I knew I had to act fast. Elvis was struggling to breathe, a clear sign of distress. His condition screamed seizure or something equally urgent, but given his state, it wasn't a simple seizure. His skin was cold and damp, indicating a severe drop in blood pressure, a common symptom when someone's body goes into shock. My first instinct was to suspect a drug overdose, but I knew better than to jump to conclusions without understanding Elvis's full medical picture. Elvis was under various doctors' care, but communication between them was lacking. No one had told me about the medications he was on, making my job even harder. With trembling hands, I prepared a shot of a liquid stimulant, aiming to stabilize Elvis's breathing. It was a tense moment as I carefully injected him, hoping for the best. Joe, another member of his inner circle, helped undress Elvis to better assess his condition. We dragged him almost lifeless into the bathroom where we filled the tub with cold water, hoping the shock would help revive him. Slowly, Elvis began to respond. It was a fragile recovery. He was semi-conscious, still struggling to fully regain control of his body. We managed to dress him and prepare him for the stage, though it was clear he was far from his usual self. His performance would be a struggle, half asleep and disoriented, but he pushed through. Meanwhile, Parker, ever the dramatic one, burst into the room, shouting about getting Elvis on stage no matter what. It was a chaotic scene, but our priority was getting Elvis the help he desperately needed. Backstage, I spoke softly to Elvis, reassuring him that the worst was over. Within hours, the audience, bewildered by the previous chaos, watched as Elvis, still struggling, attempted to regain his footing. It was a heart-wrenching sight, a megastar fighting to hold on to life. The real work began once the performance ended. It soon became clear that Elvis's condition was far more serious than a simple overdose. It was as if his body had undergone a dramatic transformation in a short span, his face bloated, hands swollen, a far cry from the vibrant performer I knew. As a diagnostician, I was perplexed. I knew something was deeply wrong, but the cause eluded me at first. Elvis's entourage was tight-lipped about his medications, and his doctors seemed unaware of the full extent of his prescriptions. It wasn't until days later, after Elvis was airlifted to Baptist Memorial Hospital after refusing to go himself, that we began to piece together the truth. Elvis arrived at the hospital in a critical state. His breathing was labored, his skin puffy, and his eyes sunken. It was clear he was in severe distress. We administered oxygen and began to investigate the cause of his swelling, a condition known as edema. Given his family history of heart disease, we initially suspected congestive heart failure but quickly ruled it out. After some deliberation, we suspected an acute drug reaction. Elvis's bloating, the swelling of his face and hands, pointed towards something more specific. Given his long-term use of steroids, likely for conditions like asthma or colitis, we suspected Cushing's syndrome. This condition, caused by an excess of corticosteroids, could explain his rapid weight gain and swelling, but there was more. Tests revealed hepatitis, which, combined with his swollen stomach, suggested his body was retaining a lot of fluid and air. His megacolon, a condition where the colon enlarges with feces and air, was full and couldn't be drained, adding to his distress. One mystery remained: the black and blue marks on his body. These marks puzzled us, adding another layer to the complex picture of Elvis's health crisis. Only Elvis could explain them once he was able to communicate again. Through a series of tests and consultations with specialists, we discovered that Elvis's condition was indeed a reaction to steroids, likely taken in massive doses, either orally or via injections. These steroids, not the kind bodybuilders use, but ones used to treat conditions like asthma and inflammatory bowel diseases, had reached toxic levels in his body. This revelation opened up a broader conversation about the dangers of experimental and poorly understood drugs during that era. Many of these medications were new, with side effects that doctors and patients often didn't fully grasp. The rampant use of amphetamines, for example, was common for treating depression quickly, despite their addictive nature and potential for severe side effects. Elvis's case underscored the critical need for better communication among healthcare providers and the importance of understanding a patient's complete medical history, especially when dealing with celebrities who often had access to a wide array of medications. In November 1973, Elvis came back to his home, Graceland, without the addictive medications that had landed him in the hospital. This was a fresh start for him. Doctors and friends had worked together to help him. They wanted to make sure he would be healthy again, without relying on drugs that could harm him. At first, the team of doctors, including Dr. Knott and Dr. Fink, focused on getting Elvis off the dangerous mix of drugs he was on. They started with explaining to him why he needed to be honest about his treatment. They sat down with him and with kindness, they showed him the truth about his addiction to Demerol and other drugs. Elvis was shocked and hurt but knew he had to face it. While Elvis was in the hospital, his friends searched his home in Graceland. They found more pills than they expected. These pills were not supposed to be there. Elvis's friend Al, who helped take care of Elvis, even went as far as taking pills from Elvis's medicine bottles and flushing them away. This showed how worried they were about Elvis's health. The team came up with a clever plan. They made fake pills called placebos to replace the real ones. These placebos had no medicine in them but looked just like the real pills. This way, Elvis would think he was taking his normal medicine, but he wouldn't actually be taking anything harmful. They worked with other people in Elvis's life to help make this plan work. As Elvis started his recovery, it was clear that loyalty to him was very strong. Some of his friends kept his drug use a secret even from each other, but they all wanted what was best for Elvis. Dr. Fink decided to keep treating Elvis, but he knew he needed to be more careful. He couldn't control what Elvis did outside of their sessions. Elvis came back to Graceland with a chance to start fresh. Dr. Fink noticed Elvis was struggling with sleep, which was adding to his other problems. Instead of jumping straight to sleep medicine, Dr. Fink suggested a unique experiment. He asked Elvis to try and stay awake as long as he could without taking any sleep aids. This would help tackle his insomnia, which was making other issues worse. To help Elvis, Dr. Fink arranged for a special sleep tape. A friend, Sam Phillips, made a recording that would help Elvis relax and hopefully fall asleep naturally. Dr. Fink told Elvis he had the freedom to do as he pleased while he was recovering. It was a change from his usual busy schedule, and Elvis was excited. Through this process, Elvis began to understand that he needed help and that asking for it wasn't a sign of weakness. The doctors and friends around him were there to support him, not to judge him. It was a hard road ahead, but Elvis had a new team behind him, ready to help him navigate his health issues without the danger of drugs. In the end, Elvis's journey to recovery was about more than just getting rid of drugs. It was about learning to take care of himself in a healthy way and understanding that he didn't have to face his problems alone. With the right support, Elvis could rebuild his life, one step at a time, free from the grip of addiction.